Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing logistics growth in today's business world. Logistics, a funny old word, actually. When you hear logistics, the first thing that comes to mind is normally not trucks, lorries and drivers. But that really is what today's program is all about. And if you operate a business at the moment, then how do you get your product, your services to your customers? We've seen a real growth in logistics over the past couple of years, with the likes of Amazon, of course, coming on stream. Even when we go onto eBay and other auction sites, of course, are available. But even when we're purchasing online, how does the product get from the warehouse to your home? It's all down to logistics. And those logistics, of course, are made up of truck drivers, they're made up of trucks, but who does the training? Where do you go to for all of that? Joining me in the studio today is Samantha Earl. She is the General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training. Samantha, lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
For people that don't know anything about Pertemps, let's kick off first of all with them. Who are Pertemps? Now, I would imagine we've all heard of Pertemps, but probably didn't realise that they did driver training to such.
Absolutely. So I would say that most people will know Pertemps as a recruitment company. We've got a branch of 150 networks. We're multi-divisional. We started in 1961, and the driver training side of the business, which I'm here to speak more about today, was started in 2012 as part of a moving forward strategy for the business for our driver division.
A lot of people probably wouldn't realise, but we were having a chat before we came on air today, and you were saying that there is actually, there was a critical shortage of drivers a few years back. It's not quite as bad as it was then, but this seems to be the ebb and flow of having the resource there at the moment. Are we short of drivers currently at the moment? And when we say drivers, are we talking about car drivers, van drivers, or are we just talking about HGV licensed drivers?
The driver crisis hit its peak in 2014, and we, as the UK, were short of nearly 50,000 drivers for what we needed for our supply and demand needs. That has got better, and we're now down to, the last stats show us about 36,000, but we still need to keep going and keep investing in the industry to ensure that we're fit for purpose for the future.
So when somebody is setting up a fleet and they're putting their fleet together, they're going out there going, all right, I need X number of drivers to drive X number of vehicles. What should be the primary consideration that they should be thinking about? It isn't just about finding the money, I would imagine, to get the trucks. It is about the recruitment of the drivers. What should a company be looking for in a driver these days?
Okay, well, there needs to be a robust recruitment strategy when looking for a driver, or indeed someone to invest in. So you'll need to be looking at their licence. There needs to be a full interview process. You need to reference their background, if they've driven before, have they had any accidents, and then ensure they're the right type of person to go and deliver for the role that you're recruiting them for. So if it's a delivery driver, delivering to customers, they need customer service skills. If it's a driver you're looking to night out, are they prepared to be able to take that time away from family to do those roles? So it's about finding the right person for the right job.
When you reflect on the drivers that you see that come through Pertemps, what do you think the biggest issue that they have? Is it a lack of understanding of what the job actually involves?
Yes, in some cases we take on experienced drivers, but through our academy that we started back in 2014, we are looking for the right type of person that will be able to understand the academic side to becoming a driver, or indeed being a driver, which is the driver's hours, the legislation that they'll have to work through during their career and understand.
So the legislation, you touched on it there, just how big, how onerous can legislation, because I think as a car driver, you get in the car, you often hear stories about people jumping in their car and driving from London down to the south of France, and we did it in one hit. Of course, that just couldn't be done, could it, by a HGV?
No,
the regulations would really stop you from doing that, wouldn't they?
So they work under the EU driving hours and working time directive. So, you know, they are limited in the amount of hours they are allowed to drive, and that, of course, is because of road safety. The loads they're carrying, 40-foot trailers, and they need to be very careful in terms of how they drive, and also the operators in terms of what runs that they're put on, and pressure they put the drivers under.
Now, we're going to talk about the responsibilities that the operator has, but also the responsibilities that the driver has.
Yeah.
Can anybody just rock up, get the keys and start driving a truck with, you know, with most basic training? Can anybody do that, or what are the rules and regulations that are surrounding somebody that's maybe watching this today and thinking to themselves, actually, okay, I'm not a business owner, but I'd be interested in working in the world of logistics and working as a driver for a large multinational or something like that. What are the key things that they need to be considering?
Okay, well, firstly, it's the licence acquisition process to go through. So that's theory, medical, practical training. And then after that, the driver who has been through that process still cannot drive until they have undertaken their either initial CPC or driver CPC.
CPC stands for?
Driver Certificate of Professional Competence.
Right.
So that was something that was an EU-led piece of legislation that came in 2009, which meant that every LGV driver driving for commercial business would need to undertake 35 hours of training, either in the classroom or on the road. Without that, they're unable to drive commercially for us.
So when somebody turns up, if they don't have that CPC certificate, I take it it's transferable across different organisations. That is personal to the driver.
It's personal to the driver, and they have their DQC card, which they can present to their employer. So if they are an agency driver, they'll be able to present that to each client that they go to drive for on assignment.
So I take it the card is like a credit card, and that shows them that they've actually got their CPC, their drive, what's it called again?
Driver's qualification card.
That once they've got that, they can actually present that to an employer, and that will actually allow them to
show their eligibility to drive, for them.
A question that a lot of people ask: the CPC card. Do you need that if you are, shall we say, a white van man? If you're a van delivery person working for, I mentioned it at the very beginning, somebody like maybe Amazon or somebody like that, and you are delivering with a van. You don't need it, and you're starting to talk about an industry-wide problem, and I think that logistics moving forward will start looking at your average van driver or car driver doing multi-drop delivery, that they do require and will need more training. It's been very led towards and leaning towards the LGV, gaining this extra experience in the classroom, upskilling their knowledge, but actually we haven't done that as an industry for van drivers, and they are under incredible amounts of pressure in their roles out there delivering multi-drops, 60, 70, 80 drops a day to try and keep everything moving, logistics moving, and the customers happy that order last night and want their delivery today. And that's an entirely unregulated area of our logistics industry. And is that something that Pertemps are sort of lobbying the government about, lobbying the industry about, that somehow we've got to bring this and give some form of regulation across the board here? Yeah,
so the people that would lobby the government for this would be our trade bodies, people like the FTA, the Road Haulers Association. The FTA in particular have
FTA,
Freight Transport Association, so it's a trade body. They recently launched, I think it was last year, Van Excellence programme. So the awareness is out there, and we certainly, from a driver training business, are working with more and more fleet operators that have that layer of either self-employed van operators into looking at their road safety and what we can do to help combat the risk there.
There are a number of people that I suppose they're looking at it or listening to what we're saying today, and they're thinking, well, look, you know, anybody can. I think Noel Edmonds once said, remember Noel Edmonds, he used to be a disc jockey. He said, exactly who? Noel Edmonds once said, everybody thinks they can be a disc jockey and a racing car driver. Does everybody think that they can be a truck driver?
Possibly, you know, no, actually, I think there's a lot of people that think I couldn't do that or I wouldn't want to get into that vehicle, and actually I think is the reverse. We do a lot of PR about saying, look, come into the industry. It isn't as bad as you think. The trucks are nice. They've got a lot of technology in, and we're trying to promote people wanting to come in that industry. Another stickling point for people thinking, oh, do I want to do this as a career, is that the process is very strenuous. People are scared. What exams do I need to do? What do I need to know? How can I work under this legislation? So what we do at Pertemps is we handhold people through that process. We know it inside out. We can help them through organising their medicals, helping them practice for their theories, getting them ready in our academy, spending the right amount of time with them rather than stipulating, well, it takes you 5 days to do your crash course in a lorry. If they need more, they get more.
Crash being the wrong word, probably.
No, yeah, that's not probably the right word.
The moment you said it, you thought, crash, wrong word.
You know, that's what they call it. That's the terminology in the industry, but yeah, wrong word. But, you know, we don't, our ethos is we'll spend as much time as possible with that learner driver to make sure they are confident and ready to go into the commercial world. It's a very pressured environment at times. You know, they'll be having to back on a bay, they're in a queue, they're going to come up against customers that are unhappy. So we try to prepare them as much as possible through that transition into the industry.
How many drivers do you get turning up to go on your course, your crash courses, to go on your courses, who are independent, who aren't working for anybody, or does it tend to be driven by the employees or the employers rather, by the companies, by the logistic organisations? So is it the large logistic organisations that approach you and say we want to put a course on for a number of new drivers, or is it the other way around where you've got new drivers that are coming to you and saying, I'd like to work in logistics, can I go on a course please?
Yeah, well, they don't say I'd like to work in logistics, they might say I'd like to be a driver.
They don't use the word logistics, do they?
No, they don't, no. So, but what I would say, there's two layers to that for us as a business. The first one, for our funded academy, what we lean to is our network of branches to find an individual that might have proven themselves, showed themselves the aptitude, been reliable, done a good job for the branch, and then we would look to invest that money. It's an incredible amount of money, really, cash investment.
On average, what was it cost to put somebody through that kind of training?
If you go from start to finish right through to your LGV C+E licence, that's your largest vehicle, then you're looking, industry average can be anything from around £4,000, maybe more, maybe less.
So it's quite an investment then for any organisation to be looking at training their drivers to that level.
Yeah, and ours is probably higher than the industry average, our costs, and the reason being is we've got the vehicles we put in our academy are of the best standard, the most the latest technology is what they're likely to be driving when they then go on to drive for our clients. There are a lot of LGV companies that will use older vehicles to bring the cost down, but actually we want to give the delegate the best learning environment. Most like for like is what they're going to then experience when they go out and they start working for our clients. The other layer, which we were talked about, was of LGV people, do they want to come and be a driver? Our companies mainly are investing because it's a lot of money for an individual to find. So they are investing, and because of our success in the academy, we've had a lot of companies come to us and say, right, can we do a licence acquisition programme for you? And we have done that in the hundreds from many reputable UK logistics companies.
All right, listen, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about where Samantha sees the drivers coming from and maybe what makes a good driver. So we've got more to come with Samantha, Earl, General Manager of Pertemps, in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. You know, it's great to have you with us. Here we are. We're live on a Monday. Hope you had a fantastic bank holiday. A lot of things been going on, of course, in the news over the past couple of weeks. But hey, we're all still here, thankfully, and we hope you're safe and well wherever you are, either in the UK or around the world, watching this particular programme. Now, don't forget, you can download the programme if you wish from iTunes. You can take us with you wherever you go, or if you want, you can also listen to the audio cast version of this. I like that audio cast, podcast version of this one. You can download it on Stitcher or Blueberry or a whole host of other podcasting websites as well. Don't forget, though, if you are watching the programme live right now on a Monday lunchtime, well, why don't you drop us a tweet if you want to have a word with us here at Business Connections Live. If you've got a question for Samantha, maybe you've been thinking to yourself, hey, I would like to get involved in the industry, then what you can do is you can get in touch with us. There's our Twitter address down the bottom of the screen, BCL Business TV. What we're going to do now, we're just going to go back a couple of weeks, in fact, because of the bank holiday that was about last weekend. And on the last show, we talked to Deborah Hume. She's the founder of Minerva Engagement, where we discussed employee engagement and the impact on employee motivation. It's an interesting subject. There are a number of programs from us here at Business Connections Live that look at the whole area of employee engagement. And the interesting thing with Deborah is that her foundation is right across the board. So not only is she an HR professional, not only is she an employee engagement professional, she's also a neuroscientist as well, and she's worked for a number of large blue chip companies to that matter. It's once again, though, it's always a fascinating show. She's been on the program a couple of times, and last week's program was no exception to the rule that everyone is really interesting. Just to give you a bit of an insight of what she talked about, here's Deborah Hume from Minerva Engagement on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing employee engagement and the impact on employee motivation. And joining me in the studio is Deborah Hume, founder of Minerva Engagement.
Also, within organisations, we tend to communicate and we tend to engage very much on a rational level. So we are very much driven by strategy and process and facts and figures, but we forget that as human beings we're very emotional, and when we're receiving information we receive it first and foremost, even though we may receive it unconsciously, we receive it first and foremost on an emotional level. I think there's a number of things actually. If you look at what gets in the way of change particularly, or if you look at what gets in the way of me being able to engage with something that you're saying, there's a number of different factors. One is attitude and beliefs. So we have very deep-seated attitudes and beliefs, and they take a lot of time to shift and to move. So therefore, if you're asking me to change something that's fundamentally going to alter the way I think about something or I do something, you have to meet me on in my belief system. You have to move my belief system. I think a lot of leaders, to be fair, these days are trying very, very hard to engage their teams and engage their wider organisations on more of a knowledge-based approach and more of a sharing of ideas. So the command and control is still there. I think a lot are trying to move away from it. It doesn't work. I mean, it used to work maybe when we were less developed and less evolved, and when we didn't have the thinking capability and we didn't have the knowledge working environment that we've got now, but it doesn't work anymore.
Even organisations that are going through a relatively stable period are still experiencing change. Thanks to many different factors, technology for one, for example, we are having to adapt daily to internal and external pressures. So organisations are having to change continuously. But if you look at organisations as being made up of many, many different individuals who are linked into many, many different teams, then actually you can think about it and you can work in a different way. It's broader than communication, I think. It's more about relationships and connections now. And people who are working in the type of organisations that we have today need to be expert at building relationships, managing networks and creating connections. So within organisations, we will have a whole load of written rules that we will expect people to follow. Then we get massively surprised if they don't follow them. When we're under stress and we're in that fear state, the thinking aspect of our brain reduces to really considerably. It reduces to practically nothing, which basically means our ability to think stops, and we start to run on our emotional responses and our emotional reaction. The person who is more aware of their own state and where they are and how they're responding to situations, forget the person who's sending the message for a minute, but the person who's receiving it, they can actually manage themselves, as I said earlier, in a much more mindful way. I think be really clear with your employees on the psychological contract, if you like, that they're engaging into when they join the organisation and when they stay with the organisation. And that's around the purpose of the organisation, the vision of the organisation, the values of the organisation, the things that determine culture and behaviour and the reason somebody's going to invest their time to be there. And we tend to do that very heavily. We talk about that very heavily at the recruitment stage, and then it can be somewhat different when they join the organisation. And I think maintaining that and that level of consistency right through the employee life cycle is very, very hard to do. Deborah Hume, I'm from Minerva Engagement, and we specialise in employee engagement, internal communication and culture change. And I think the main takeaway from today is that employee engagement is very much around building connections and building relationship. It's a long, ongoing process, but it is something that makes a huge difference to sustainability in business, and it requires a different way of thinking and a different way of being than perhaps what we've dealt with before.
Just a great show. Deborah Hume there from Minerva Engagement. Fantastic programme. If you did miss it, I suggest you go back to our website at businessconnectionslive.com and you can watch the programme there. Incidentally, if you're thinking to yourself, my word, I'd love to have a program like this for my own organisation, then you can get in touch with us here. What we can do, we can customise the show. We can make it completely personal to your organisation. It can be sort of branded and all of that. If you're interested in doing that, well, why don't you get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live, and we'll have a bit of a chat and tell you what is possible. In fact, the only limitation will be your imagination. You can drop us an email if you wish to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you want to, you can always give us a call and have a word with either myself or Linda Bazant. Our telephone number is 01784 256 777. Don't forget, you can follow our train of consciousness, BCL Business TV on the Twitter. You can also watch us, and you can watch Facebook Live as well. You can see the programme there and leave comments and views and reviews of what you see at Facebook. But more importantly, do visit our website at businessconnectionslive.com. That really is the mothership of all those different addresses. Go there, leave a comment about the individual programmes. There are over 200 hours of great pieces of business advice, some fantastic experts who are on there telling you everything you need to know, everything from funding all the way to, hey, getting a career in logistics. So there you go. So go to the website to find out more. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company with us today. My guest on today's show is Samantha Earl. She's the General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training. You were alluding, Samantha, to the academy before we started, something that Pertemps do. Now, a lot of organisations will have some form of driver school. What do you think makes the Pertemps Academy that little bit different from what other offerings are out there?
Okay, well, it was a strategy really. So we looked at the market and logistics as a whole to think how we're going to be fit for purpose for the future. In 2014, I mentioned we were at the height of the crisis for drivers. And obviously
that's a crisis we never heard of, isn't it?
Yeah. I just think logistics is not spoken about enough, and so what we did was, rather than be a talking shop, is find a solution to the problem. We looked at and researched why aren't people wanting to be in logistics, why aren't they knocking a door down to be a driver? Cost was one of them, so the investment is too large for an individual, but also nervousness around the process that they'd have to go through. So the strategy was, if we can offer it as free training as an investment, and also have a robust team to handhold them through the process, would we then get people knocking our door down? Well, of course we did, but we used the two strategies really to finding the right people to put through our academy and invest in. One being through the branches and the network and the recommendations through there, but secondly, a partnership that we formed with the military to train and familiarisation train ex-soldiers and reservist soldiers.
Now they come with skills already, don't they? So we've talked before about this, but when you're talking to somebody who's been in the military, there are skills that, yes, they may drive big trucks and they may drive them in very difficult situations, but that the regime that they work under while working in the military is very different from a commercial driver on the road. So is it sometimes difficult to teach an old dog new tricks?
No, very willing applicants, delegates, if you like. What we did realise is we can't work with the military and just take the soldiers just because they have a licence, because they really aren't fit to drive in the commercial world. They need their handheld through their career transition. They used to be told what to do, very structured environment. The vehicles,
right down to reversing, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
They have that, what's it called? Is it a banksman?
They have a banksman, so so they don't have to actually reverse in the army. Well, actually, when you come into the commercial world and you're backing onto a bay in the middle of crick somewhere, you need those reversing skills. They also take their licences in wagon and drags, and then they actually come out into the commercial world, and then they don't do. You wouldn't do your test in that normally. So we need to hold their hand. They could actually come out once they've got their initial CPC and did that little bit of training, and they could drive for anybody, but we decided that it wasn't the right thing to do. We needed to make sure they felt comfortable under pressure. They understood they don't know driver's hours or working to rules or regulations, and we needed to give them that knowledge to make sure that they're safe when they go out for our customers.
Now you're doing a lot then with the army at the moment.
Yeah.
I understand you were last week you were up in London, weren't you?
Yes.
And you were sort of dealing with the boys.
Yes.
As they were coming out. So what kind of things do you do to promote, should we say, your organisation into the military services?
Well, so what we did is we took on what we like to call a liaison officer, which is actually an acting major for the reservists now, and he's able for us to understand the mechanisms and where to find the soldiers that want to have that career transition into logistics, and to open it up and to sell it as a potential opportunity for them. So they'll go to, so we have a liaison team that will go to all the CTP events. We do a lot of internal PR with them, and we'll go to events at a higher level where our teams will be talking to brigadiers and different regiments and warrant officers. So we really try to have a partnership and collaborate with them. So that they know there's a commercial company ready to take them. We're not the only one doing it. There was 22 awarded with a gold award last year, and we were honoured to be one of those. And that's because we are in excess of nearly 500 soldiers that we have worked with now since 2014.
Which is a phenomenal number, actually, isn't it? And
it is, yeah.
sometimes that transition from military life, nearly institutionalised life, to civilian life, to civvies, can be very, very difficult for them. I would imagine this kind of transition is the kind of thing that would really, really help them. Yeah,
absolutely. And, my partner is ex-military, so I know only too well what that transition feels like from first hand. So I am really proud that we are able to offer that hand-holding experience for them into the commercial world, to make sure that they feel comfortable and they can find a route to where they want to be in the industry. We're looking at other avenues, not just logistics, to help support different skill sets. We've got an untapped resource there, really, and I think we owe it to the military to help support them.
Do you think, leaving the military behind us, do you think that people that are in full-time education, students, do they see it's a strange word in logistics. It's not, logistics doesn't really say what the job's all about, even though it says exactly what the job's all about. But it's not a career. The career would be a driving career or things like that. Is it promoted, do you think, well enough when you're looking for other resources? Is it promoted well enough to people that are in full-time education, school leavers and people like that? As an industry, are you proactively going out there and saying to them, look, this actually could be a career for you?
Yeah, I don't think we're proactive enough, definitely. I think logistics is a strange word, really, because it does house many roles that you wouldn't think that are in there. So we've got transport planners, administrators, HR people connected to that, administrators, drivers, so middle managers like myself in the supply chain, recruitment companies. Logistics is huge. I don't think we promote it enough. I think we all need to do more. Any logistics companies out there need to think about what their strategy is to promote it to the next generation. We did a filming and a training session for a car racer, Tom Ingram, and we collaborated with the Road Hall Association on that back last year. Did 4 programmes just to show the younger generation what that process looks like. So,
is it the linguistics that we use? Is it the way that we frame it? A truck driver or a lorry driver doesn't sound as glamorous as a professional driver. Yes.
Definitely, and they are professional drivers. The demands are huge in terms of that role for a driver. So I do think we need to talk about it more. We all need to, as commercial companies, push that PR to people understand what a professional driver is, what, you know, challenges that they're facing. But yes, that's a more positive word that we could use, professional driver, rather than, you know, lorry driver or whatever.
Let's, I mean, there's been a lot of talk. I mean, we've got at the moment when this has been recorded, we've got a general election just around the corner. We're all talking Brexit. We will be for the next, I would imagine, 2 years. What about European drivers or drivers that come from outside of the UK? Is that another untapped source of potential candidates, both for the academy, and is it also an untapped resource when it comes to skilled professional drivers?
Well, actually, in our driver pool right now, we have 30,000 EU drivers that drive for us in the UK. So, you know, it has been a great source of drivers, especially when we've gone through a number of years where we have been in crisis. I don't know what that looks like in the future. We're in uncharted territory post-Thursday or post-Brexit.
Or whenever, yeah.
Or whatever happens. What I would say is whatever happens on Thursday, whoever takes office and goes into government, they need to make sure they go and speak to the commercial companies to understand the problems that we might be facing. With
the shortage that we've had in drivers in the past, do government institutions and government bodies, do they talk, do you think, enough to organisations like yours to identify what the needs are and what can be done and what they can do to help organisations like you?
I think the general rule of thumb is that they talk to the trade bodies, and the trade bodies represent us as commercial operators. Are they out talking to us enough? Possibly not. You know, but that there is a structure where, you know, we can go to our trade body to say we need to start looking at this or lobbying this, and that those channels are often used.
So we've talked about the recruitment of the drivers. There should be more done, maybe perhaps going to schools and colleges and talking to them as professional drivers. We've talked a bit about the fact that you've got this liaison with the military services, and you've got people that are coming out of the military back into civilian life and now becoming drivers, and you're doing the training through the academy for them as well. I suppose that kind of leads us on. So that's the responsibilities of the driver. What about the responsibilities of the employer? What are the responsibilities of the employer? Where does the line stop? And where does the employer's responsibilities begin when it comes to managing a fleet of drivers? You must obviously talk on a regular basis to fleet operators. One of your biggest clients, of course, is the Royal Mail. Are we allowed to say that?
No.
Okay, it's on the website. But anyway, but they, you know, you work quite a lot with them and other large organisations like them. So where's their responsibility when it comes to the training of their drivers? And if a driver does something that is not, perhaps maybe isn't correct, or they break a rule, whose responsibility is it? Is it part the drivers? Is it part the organisation? How does that work?
Well, it depends what layer of driver entitlement you're looking at. So LGV, they're regulated by their operator's licence. So that will cover things like driver's hours, vehicle safety, and then also underpinning all of that for all drivers and all fleets is a duty of care to make sure that the vehicles they're driving are roadworthy, to make sure they're comfortable with the job, if they're familiarised with the vehicles they're asking them to drive, making sure the runs are you're able to actually complete them on time, so you're not adding too much pressure to a driver.
Is it quite pressurised as an industry, do you think?
Yes, definitely. When you look at a multi-drop driver having to carry out 60, 70 drops a day, that's a pressurised environment. Not only that, once you take a vehicle onto the road, other people's influences may put you under pressure as well. Their driving behaviours and styles and your own. So yes, I would say it is a pressurised environment.
Well, I know we're going off the topic now, and we will come back to what the employees' or employers' responsibilities are, but when somebody walks in through the door, can you and your team, can you go, yeah, that person will make a good professional driver?
No, they need to not walk through the door. They need to go through the process. You need to spend time with them, talking to them, interviewing them, and find out whether they have the right behaviours to be able to go out and be a driver. We really major on the behavioural side of training and understanding why people do things. You know, we all know not to speed at 70, and that's the speed limits. But people still do it. Why do they still do it? So it's about taking it back a layer to say, what are the coping strategies of that individual person? Why have they chosen to speed? Perhaps they were late, they're bad at time management. That needs to be looked at. You know, why do we do these things? Because we all know the rules of driving.
All right, listen, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about the employer's responsibilities and what you should be thinking about. Maybe perhaps the organisation or the company that you're starting up at the moment, or maybe the company that you've got at the moment actually relies on having a team of skilled professional drivers who are sitting out there waiting to do your every call, your every whim. Listen, we'll talk more to Samantha Earl, General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training, in just a few moments' time. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company here on a Monday afternoon. We're going to go back and we're going to look at a particular program that we did. This is Business Connections Live 119. Went out in February of last year. We had Denise Quinlan and Mark Walker, and they came on the program to share some of their specialist, easy for me to say, specialist knowledge and experience on how to help individuals and businesses stand out from the crowd. It's very easy just melding into the background, isn't it, to be Mr. Grey, but I can be very Mr. Grey. But what do you do to make yourself stand out? How do you go about doing that? Where does it start? Does it start in a great picture of you? Does it start perhaps maybe when you go onto LinkedIn occasionally and you go down the profiles? What catches your eye immediately? Is it the description, the written word, or is it the picture? And the same applies to your business as well. How do you make people just stop for a moment and give your business maybe that little bit of conscious viewing, a moment to stop and to look and go, I'll actually find out a little bit more about them. How do you go about doing that? Well, that's what they were telling us on the program. Denise Quinlan and Mark Walker, just to remind you, here's what they said when they were on Business Connections Live.
My name is Denise Quinlan. I'm from Insightful Images. I'm a specialist business photographer helping you and your business to stand out from the crowd. I guess there are 3 points hints and tips that I'd like to get across to you. One is visual is important. Don't underestimate the power of visual. We process the images so quickly, that shows you how important and impactful they are. So make sure your photograph is a good one. Tell the story. Number 2, tell the story. Pick on something that is relevant about yourself, about your business, and focus just on that one point and bring that out in the image. And that will help you stand out from the crowd. And there's a lovely quote by Airbnb that anonymity erodes trust. So not having a photograph isn't actually a good option for you. I think you're doing yourself a disservice to yourself and your business. People like to see people have your photograph engaging with your viewers and the people who are going to be looking at your photograph.
My name's Mark Walker. I'm with Burway PR. I'm a PR consultant and business writer, and I'm helping mid-sized and small companies tell stories. There are 3 things that I would say to organisations. The first is to think about what is unique. What's your USP? Is it what your customers are saying? Talk to your customers. Find out what your coal-face personnel are saying. If you don't have any customers, think about your niche market and think about what your ideal customer would want or what contacts in the business are looking for. The second thing is always have your customers speaking for you. Absolutely essential to have that customer endorsement, and it may be through an article, or it might simply be a sentence or 2 that's displayed on a website. They have tremendous power. The third thing is, in an age of rolling media, we have to look at how we can provide some sort of context for what's going on out there. Can we provide some interpretation as to how markets and business and life changes? If your business can offer insights, if it can actually share some ideas for free with people, it will be in a very strong place to be able to influence and to attract customers and prospects. It's all about telling stories.
It's all about telling stories. How very true. Denise Quillen and Mark Walker there sharing some of their specialist knowledge and experience on how they help individuals and businesses stand out from the crowd, engage their audience and also build their brand. A real blizzard of information on that particular programme. If you have the opportunity, do check it out. Particularly, I mean, let's face it, we are all online nearly 24/7 these days. If you've got any form of social media account, then you need to be getting the right message out there. If you are a business, you need to be talking to your customers using social media campaigns. It is really very, very important. Do check out that programme. It's one of over 200 hours worth of great business advice from us here at Business Connections Live. And don't forget, you can download it as well if you wish on iTunes, and it's dead easy to do that as well, for that matter. All you got to do is just follow the link on our website and that'll take you to your iTunes player, as long as you've got an iTunes account, of course. And then if you wish, you can then just follow it through and leave a 5-star review. It's dead easy. Let me take you through the process. All you've got to do is just click on here, just view in iTunes, and that will take you into your account, into your iTunes account. Up there you'll see there's a ratings and reviews. Click on that link there and then leave us a nice 5-star review and say something nice about the programme, how you found it interesting, how you made it feel, or how it made you think about maybe logistics as a career. It's as easy as that. 5-star reviews are always good, and what happens then, of course, is your review will then work in the analytics that they use on iTunes, and it will then recommend the programme to other people who will also benefit from the show as well. And don't forget, you can download the programme in its entirety, all of them, 200 hours worth of them. You can download and you can take them with you wherever you go. Don't forget, if you want to actually watch the programmes and leave a comment as well and find out more about us here at Business Connections Live, you can go to the website at businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company with us today. Joining me in the studio is Samantha Earl. She's the General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training. We've been looking at the whole aspect of maybe a career when it comes to working in the logistics industry, and we were just touching on the responsibilities that the employers actually have when it comes to being in the logistics industry, what their responsibilities are to their drivers, and likewise what the driver's responsibility is to the employer. I think the biggest issue some of the time is knowing, one gets trained and the other doesn't get trained. So you've got drivers who are highly skilled, highly trained, working within an industry. They're working to particular rules of the road that they have to follow. And then you've got employers who, of course, who are trying to make them do even more to try to get their pound of flesh, I would imagine. Is that an issue sometimes when you are talking to employers, that the drivers have actually got this restriction on, they've got a limited number of hours that they can work, they must have breaks for safety and all these kind of things, and of course all the employer wants is for them to work harder, faster, longer. Is that sometimes an issue? Is there an education process that goes on when you're talking to the fleet operators?
Yeah, definitely. So it is an issue, although I must say that a lot of fleet operators understand that, and they work proactively in terms of training their drivers. They have a duty of care, any logistics or fleet business, to ensure the safety of their drivers, but also our general public as well. So we work with companies to try and reduce their road risk for their fleet. So we'll go in, we'll analyse maybe their data from their telematics, from their accident history, and we'll start working together to collaborate, to put a plan together that is actually going to work, and it works for their drivers, the types of incidents or issues that they might be facing as a business.
So when you mentioned there telematics, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. And
there are so many people now, so many of the car manufacturers and the truck manufacturers talking about telematics. But what advantages can you get from telematics? And for those people that don't know what telematics are, what is telematics?
So telematics are tracking systems that will be in cab, and what that will do is give the operator data sets. So it was commonly brought in back sort of 10 years ago. It kind of went really big, and it was because people got it in their trucks or vehicles to save fuel. So it was about fuel efficiency.
So does it show driver techniques or driver
Yes,
what the driver is doing effectively, heavy braking, fast acceleration,
exactly, all of that, which, you know, are elements that you need to not do for fuel efficiency driving. However, what it's doing is giving the operator, the fleet operator, information on actually how their driver behaviours are and their skills. And we work with companies to say, you've got this data, you've probably had it for a long time and consistently, we need to sit down and use that as a base to start building a road safety plan to avoid collisions and safeguard your drivers and workforce.
Did the drivers, when that came in, did they see it as a spy in the cab?
Absolutely, there was uproar.
So how did you get around that?
I think as a generation we've changed. Everyone's had to get used to things being live like this, and you know, and everything at a touch of a button, and social media, and you know, cameras here. So it's a very different. We're very different in how we are now, and I think drivers have come along that. But there was uproar back in the time. It was that it's going to be Big Brother, and we had to sit down with our drivers and say it's not used for that. You know, maybe the cameras have been put in because of insurance reasons. You know, and it wasn't about trying to, you know, discredit the driver or the driver's ability. It was about enhancing those driver skills. Do companies really use the information, or do they collect it because they feel they have to and then do nothing with it? And is that very much down to what you guys at Pertemps do? You go to them and go, actually, you've got all this fantastic data resource. If you use it, you can save money. Yeah. Is that what you guys do? Well, we go in and first and foremost our goal is safety. Actually, we're a driver training business. Obviously, it's great to save money and you can set up programs that you do have a return on invoice. Honestly, you know, your bent metal cost and stuff. But actually, what we're trying to do is reduce the risk of losing life. That's what we do. So yeah, they are collecting this data. I don't entirely know whether they realise that they've got this and they can use this in a proactive way. You know, a lot will, but there's some we're talking to that still don't realise.
So how do we move forward then? So let's talk a little bit about the employer's responsibility. We kind of touched on it earlier on. At what point, I mean, what are the liabilities that an employer will have if they don't, if their drivers aren't trained appropriately, if their drivers get something wrong on the road? What kind of issues can an employer actually end up having?
Yeah, well, if it's LGV, then it's related back to your O licence, that could be taken away. But ultimately, it's very case study based. You know, if an accident and a fatality was to happen in any type of vehicle, then there's going to be investigation involved. Have you looked after the vehicle? Let's have a look at your maintenance records. Have you done any training for your drivers? Have you been proactive? You know, people like the DVSA and legally, they want to see you being proactive as an operator. It's not just about meeting the minimum standard, it's about doing more and demonstrating that.
Now, your academy, you are a driving training academy. Is it just HGV that we're talking about, or are we talking about company car drivers as well? Do you train them as well? I mean, they must be the worst if you do. But they, you know, do you train them too? Do you take them aside? Do you talk about speed awareness? Do you talk about the way to drive safely? Is that the kind of thing that you do with the company fleet drivers too? Yeah.
So our academy is our internal investment. So if we move that to a side, and that's our LGV licence acquisition assessments, and we look at the driver training external business that we have, we deliver to over 100 customers, even just this year alone, where they might be, you know, fleet drivers that are maybe sales reps. It could be van drivers going right through to your LGV. So what our unique position is, we understand the driver, and it doesn't matter whether it's a B licence or it's LGV. We cover the whole range and
B licence is what I would
B
have.
licence what you drive. Well, I don't know what you might have grandfather rights.
I drive a forklift. No, I drive a small Jaguar like yourself does, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But so the B licence is your typical ordinary car
yes,
driver
it's your ordinary
licence.
car driver that might be driving for work. Like me, I drive around the country, so I'm effectively a fleet driver.
When you see drivers coming in, is there a way that you can see a profile, perhaps, of the kind of organisation they work for, the kind of drivers they are, depending on how many thousands of miles they drive each year, the industry that they're in? Are there any peculiarities between the different kinds of industries where you will see that reflected in the kind of the driving record that you see?
Yeah, so I'm classed as a high-risk driver, not because of my driving ability or how I behave on the road, it's the amount of miles I do. So you have the traditional methods of measuring risk, risk, which is your licence, how many miles you're on the road, have you had any collisions, etc. You know, and any endorsements on your licence. We've tried to take that a step further, and we look at the driver behaviour aspects. So we've collaborated with a company called Metrics, which is backed by driver behaviour specialists, where it's almost like a psychometric test for drivers, and it will pick up on the types of behaviours that we're likely to exhibit on the road as my personality.
That's why you're such a high risk.
Well, I'm low risk in that, obviously.
So that must be quite interesting. So could anybody go take that particular course if they wanted to?
Yeah, I mean that's an online test, and that will give a fleet manager the opportunity to understand the risk in their business. And then there's the more traditional types of risk tests that you'd ask, you know, your drivers to do. So it's quite easy to be able to get, even if you've never done it and you don't realise really you're a fleet operator, the tools are out there to gain the picture of your business, to then start from scratch and think, right, how do I put a proactive risk management program in place here?
All right, so if you're looking then and you've got a program in place, what kind of tools are available then for the fleet operator to maintain their fleet? As we said, we've talked about drivers all the way up until now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be the employer now, and I'm sitting there in my big office smoking my big fat cigar, making an absolute fortune at the moment. And the situation is that I want to make certain that I want to get my drivers covered. I want to make certain, so I've got telematics giving me information and data. What about the control of things like licenses, my fleet car drivers and people like that? Is there a way that I've got a system that I can put together that will allow me to manage that?
Yeah, so it's about building that picture. It's that journey of risk. So it might be the licence, and there are systems out there. You'll be doing DVLA checks direct with the DVLA to check the licence and endorsements. Then you'll be looking at the accidents, and you'll have that feeding in. Then you'll be looking at maybe testing the drivers online and giving them some e-learning. Maybe you can even add in their eyesight checks. That's the next thing coming to the industry, your online eyesight checks. So it's about building that picture of risk. But what I would say to any fleet operator looking to look at this and build that programme is find a company that's going to work for you. And what I mean by that is, rather than have a training company with a portfolio of generalistic topics, you know, okay, we've got speed awareness, we've got this, we've got that. Actually, it needs to be tailored. Every fleet operator will have different issues because they have different types of drivers. So what they need is to work with a company that will come in, embed themselves in the business, understand the ethos, understand the problems, look at the data, because that's supporting, but actually sit down and build a bespoke programme with the customer that fits their business. And then, further more than that on the training aspect, ask your training provider to measure back the effectiveness of that through management information. Has that training that we've built worked? If it hasn't, how can we change it? It's about being progressive. So always embed yourself with a company and the expertise that are willing to sit around the table and say, what are your real issues, and have those open and frank conversations.
All right, still more to come from Samantha Earl, General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training. If you're sitting there thinking, well, I didn't realise there was so much responsibility on the employer, and I didn't realise there was so much responsibility on the employee when it comes to the training, and also what's available out there as well for you if you are a professional driver. A lot of us probably working within the industry that we're in, we are perceived as professional drivers. More to come from Samantha Earl on this edition of Business Connections Live. Hope you enjoyed today's program. Absolute insight. You know, we jump into the car, we get the keys out, we put it in the ignition, and we're gone, aren't we? And sometimes we just don't realise about the consequences of exactly what we're doing when we're out there. And I hope today has been a bit of an eye-opener for you. It's frightened the daylights out of me. I hope it's given you the kind of information perhaps that you need to find out about. And we'll show you their website in just a moment. But before that, if you are enjoying today's program, maybe you'd like to support the show, you can become a Patreon. It's a bit like being a patron, but a Patreon of the programme. It's a bit like being maybe a member, perhaps. All you've got to do is go to the website, find the orange banners that are all over the businessconnectionslive.com website. When you find one of those, just click on that, and it will take you then to a page that's like this. So you can now support the programme. Support us on Patreon. Now, when you start supporting us, there are a number of rewards. So if you're a large multinational, multinational, a large corporate, and you think, you know, it'd be really good. You get a program, you can come on the show, you can talk about what your business does. If you're one of our founding patrons, then you'll get a mention on the program. So it's a great way to support your favorite business show. It's dead easy to do that, and you just simply go along to our website, find those orange little buttons, press on those, and you could then support us here on Patreon. As easy and as straightforward and as quick as that. We'd love you to do that, and thank you very much to all the people who have supported us so far and become one of our brand new patrons. And as we like to say, here it comes any moment now. Talking up to the vocals, support us on Patreon. You're watching Business Connections Live. Joining me in the studio today is General Manager of Pertemps, Samantha Earl. You know, it's been a real insight into the whole area of driver training. I think there are things that a lot of people will just sort of gloss over, or they will miss out. What do you think the key things are that perhaps we've maybe missed as we've talked our way through today? Are there any key areas that we've missed?
Okay, I don't think there's any key areas. I think the most important thing I would say to anybody is understand your corporate responsibility, not just to the point of legislation, but actually duty of care. Take it that next step further. Embed yourself and work with only a company that are willing to come to the table and help you develop what you need, and deliver meaningful training. And finally, engage with your drivers. These boys and girls are doing a tough job. Look after them. They are your commodity in your business. And start thinking about, are you doing enough as a business to give back and to help ensure that we are fit for purpose for the future as an industry?
When companies, we should have really asked this at the very beginning, when companies do turn up and they talk to you, is there a common mistake? You mentioned there that perhaps the employers sometimes don't talk enough to their drivers. What do you see as the most common, maybe not mistake, but something that is overlooked by the employers? Do they assume a lot? Do they approach, or do they manage their drivers in a particular way because it's just the way they've always done it and it's the way the industry does it? Are there common mistakes that you see?
I would say people need to understand that being a driver can be a lonely job. And you might just then have, 4 drops, and you might be met with a resistant customer, and that's the amalgamation of a day. You could be stuck in traffic for 4 hours. These things happen, and they probably don't get to talk to people all day. So, when your drivers come back from the yard, take the time to sit down, find out about their day. How was it? I'm a great believer in how you manage your people, sort of lead from the front, be interested in them, and I'd urge anybody else to be the same, really.
Pertemps, because it's in the name, permanent, temporary.
Yeah.
So a lot of your drivers are going to be under contract, I would imagine, or they are going to be temporary drivers for a particular contract. Is that a different animal as well? Because you're not actually working for the organisation itself. So do you see sort of some drivers that fit very well into this kind of dynamic process? They can work for anybody because they've got the appropriate skills and they're detached enough not to really worry about the personalities. And then other drivers who are dedicated to a particular employer and quite like working for somebody, that one person in particular. Do you see a difference?
Yeah, I think there is. I think you're right, but it's how you manage your drivers, especially from an agency perspective. So we train all of our transport consultants because they're not salespeople; they're managing their drivers. The amount of legislation that our transport consultants need to know is far greater than it used to be when you get your average recruitment consultant in the driving industry. So we train and hold their hand to help them to effectively manage their drivers. You do need to be in contact with your driver. My director would say every day, twice a day, because he believes if you look after your drivers, they'll stay driving for you, and then obviously doing a good job for your clients. If they get taken on, then great, you've helped that transition.
When you look at the drivers that are coming through the doors, there was somebody thinking today that they would actually like a career. I take it you can't just have people rocking in off the street and going, fancy being a professional driver, I'll go on one of your courses, please. Is there a process prior to the psychometric tests and everything like that before you start investing into them? What's the criteria you're looking for there?
There's a rigorous recruitment process with a large...
Beat 'em with a stick, are they?
No, cuddled. You know, we're the largest independent-owned recruitment company. We've been around for a long time. Our process is rigorous. You know, they are sat in having their interview. They are checked. The licence are checked. They are then referenced. And then even if they get to a point where, say, the consultant might still think, I don't know, I'm not sure, we might put them into the academy so that they have the practical training on top. And we really are leader in our field in the way that we recruit and retain our drivers in terms of Pertemps.
Okay, listen, I'm going to ask you very shortly to actually do the key. I know you feel like you've done it, but you're going to be doing it again.
Okay.
The key takeaways with just a little bit more detail on it, on what somebody should be thinking about if they are thinking about having a career in logistics, and how important it is and why we've still got this shortage of drivers. Also, just a brief reminder as well of what the employer should be considering as well when it comes to perhaps maybe he's got an existing fleet out there and he wants to get them trained, so if we can give them some advice on that. If you want to check out Pertemps' website and find out more about what they do, they've got your training covered. These are their basic standard cars that they've got here. These are the company cars. Vans, trucks, BMWs, and what's the other one? Lamborghinis. So if you want to work for any organisation, you definitely want that car as your company car. But they do cover everything for individual drivers as well who are looking for training. So if you are maybe a one-man band, this is going to help you once again. I'm going to ask Samantha in just a moment, give her a chance. If I go on the training, is there an opportunity to reduce my insurance because I've been on the training? Does that help?
Well, it can help in some instances. So some insurance providers we work with use us, Pertemps driver training, as the go-to person to say go and have training from them, and we can help reduce the premium. So it's done in that way. It doesn't, from an individual driver, it doesn't...
So for fleet operators, it could actually reduce insurance cover and costs for the fleet driver. I'm a business looking for training, so if you are an organisation at the moment and you're looking for training, of course, that's going to be able to help your guys. And I'm a road safety partner. What's a road safety partner? That is a...
Okay, so that's people that we collaborate with, like The Honest Truth. They are backed by the police.
The Honest Truth?
The Honest Truth, which is a campaign for young drivers across the country to try and encourage safe driving behaviours. For us, is about working from the ground up, which is why we work with The Honest Truth on that programme. We've recently collaborated with Highways England for the Red X, which is just recently come out, and trying to get the awareness out for that.
X?
Red X, you know, on the when they...
on smart motorways.
Smart motorways, yeah. And we're going live with the driver CPC module for that for our GV drivers. So we try to collaborate where we think we're going to add value, but also we can help them enhance their message out into the commercial market. Somebody
just said to me, the Red X and smart motorways, if you're not familiar, this is where they get rid of the hard shoulder, and the hard shoulder becomes they call it a live running lane. And interestingly, I was reading in the newspaper over the weekend that there are a number of drivers who still feel uncomfortable about using the hard shoulder as a live running lane, but the biggest problem is that when there is a red X above that particular lane, it is no longer a live running lane, because I think it's what the safety exits or the lay-bys where you can pull in are every 1.5 miles or thereabouts. Yes. So you've really got to have your wits about you, and they are saying that they are working, even though some other organisations feel that they haven't been as successful as they could be, and perhaps maybe have even suggested that they could well be dangerous. But the thing is that, you know, it's only dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with it. So if everybody's following the same rules and they're following the red X's and they know when they should and they shouldn't be using one of those hard shoulder live running lanes, then of course they can walk away from it. Okay, so that's the roads. How do we explain that, just in case people didn't know? So let's just work down. So what the services you're looking for, so CPC training, stuff like that, what the customers say. See, we're not allowed to mention them. We're very pleased to have this on their website. We're very pleased to have Pertemps as a partner. We've developed many bespoke training solutions with their support and have been seeing a reduction in collision rates since the start of the contract. And surely that is what an organisation is actually looking for, isn't it? isn't it? If you've got a fleet of drivers out there, you want them to be safer, more efficient. You lose a van or a truck or a car for any length of time, and you're going to see a dip in your revenue coming in. So, you know, this is control of your fleet. And then there's all the other, there's a whole load of good advice on there as well, and also some of the awards that they've been accredited over the past couple of months or the past couple of years. All right then, Samantha Earl, we're nearly at the end at the programme. It's just that really the key takeaways that we need to remember from today's show as a driver and as a fleet operator. Straight down camera number 4 is yours. Say who you are and where you're from.
Okay, so I'm Samantha Earl, General Manager. Happy to have been with you today. So I believe that the core things to remember, from a driver perspective, choose the right employer that is going to offer you that continued professional development and handhold you in a very stressful job sometimes. The second thing is to work with, if you're a client, work with a training provider that is going to be bespoke and help you actually reduce road risk, and it's meaningful to you. Thirdly, engage with your drivers. If you're a client, engage with your drivers, spend the time with them to understand the pressures that they come up against day to day. And that's it really. For more information, please go to our website at www.pertempsdrivertraining.co.uk. Thank you.
And that will take you straight to their website where you can find out more information about what Pertemps can actually offer you, your employees, and you as an employer as well. It's been a fascinating insight into it. When you went through the psychosomatic,
Psychometric, yes.
Yeah, through the psychometrics.
Yeah.
What did they come up with you? What were your weaknesses that you were able to work on?
Mine was actually high on fatigue, actually, for the amount of hours potentially driving and stuff. So for me, it was about plotting better rest breaks and actually taking them. I'm quite a grafter. I like to be busy, so I had to kind of take a look at myself and think, right, can I plan my day better, in terms of keeping myself safe and anybody else? So I was high on fatigue.
So it can be a real eye-opener then for somebody that is doing this.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of information you think, how in the world did they know that?
How do they know that? Exactly.
That's really quite spooky, really.
Yeah, and we're quite lucky because we have Sandra McDonough-Dames works as part of my team, and she's a specialist in driver behaviours, soon to be a doctorate. And so we really champion this aspect of really making change in terms of risk. And if I can identify and agree in myself, and I'm quite a strong-headed person, then anybody can.
Listen, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. It's been a real insight, hasn't it? If you are operating that fleet, if you're thinking about looking for drivers, maybe you should be picking the phone up and giving Samantha a call and finding out how Pertemps can help your organisation, your operation, your business to actually grow and develop and to be safer when you're out there on the roads. There is a whole host of different areas that you can talk about on this, everything from telematics all the way through the driver behaviour. If you are going out and you're thinking about getting your CPC, then maybe they should be the first port of call that you should be talking to. It sounds like an ad. It's not meant to. There are other organisations out there, but at least you've heard it from, dare I say this, the horse's mouth today, and found out a little bit more about what Pertemps can offer you. My thanks to Samantha Earl, General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training, on today's edition of Business Connections Live. So before we finish, let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we walk out the door. She can now relax and just take it easy. On next week's programme, we've got a great show lined up for you, as has today's show been. We've got James Potter. He joins me here in the studio. Are you using LinkedIn? Are you doing that to prospect for new customers at the moment? Do you go online? You maybe spend an hour or so on LinkedIn? Well, James Potter, he is the LinkedIn man, and he's going to be joining me on next week's edition of the program. It's going to be a really good show. I think LinkedIn is changing the way Microsoft are working on it at the moment since they bought it. Some things have been taken, some things have been given away, and James is just a great guy, and he'll explain how you can maximise your return using LinkedIn. We've got Michael Graham and Luke Cruz. They're going to be joining us very shortly from MJB Graham. We'll roll those credits then, shall we? We've got Successful Fundraising. Ian Dixon, speaker and coach, will be joining us. Grant Leibot, Sticky Marketing Club, and Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25. All to come on future editions of the program. Till we do it again, have yourself a great week. Bye for now. Bye-bye.